HBC Digest Radio, welcome back to our presidential series, conversations with distinguished leaders from historically black colleges and universities across this great country. And today our distinct honor is to have the distinguished Chancellor of North Carolina A&T State University, NCAT alum, and leading one of the most dynamic periods of growth for an HBCU we've seen in generations, Chancellor Harold Martin. So Dr. Martin, it is indeed an honor to speak with you again.
Oh, pleasure's mine, I assure you.
So Aggie Land has unprecedented growth in enrollment, the largest four-year historically black institution in the country at this point. Record growth over the last 2 to 3 years in research funding and expenditures. New facilities, athletic success across the board where any leader would want to be defined as doing their job well. You are doing it. And I can't say that that's rare, but when it's all cylinders, it's certainly something to notice. I mean, what would you attribute? Obviously, your experience and your love for the institution makes that possible, but to do all this at one time, did you see it happening this way, this quickly?
You know, it's a great question, and quite honestly, we've been building toward a greater level of success on our campus since my arrival in 2009. Certainly having the history of the university from my former role here on the campus in several capacities, and then having worked in the system office and was aware of what was going on across the UNC system, created an opportunity for me to take a look at A&T and where there were opportunities and frame out very aggressive strategy with our Board of Trustees and with our university's constituents. But it meant that we would have to make some really, really tough decisions about our university early, and people would have to buy into the strategies we were going to implement, and over time, we should start seeing progress of the institution, growth, expansion in new programs and research, and et cetera. And I think we're beginning to see the evidence of investments made and decisions made years ago that are now beginning to come together and making a big difference for us.
How do you make that work? You talked about your time at the system office, and you had experience, obviously, very successful tenure at Winston-Salem State. But how do you make that case? Is it a chicken and egg proposition where you get with your team and you create a strategic plan, and the legislature buys into investing in that and helping to direct student and student service resources to that proposition? Or do you do well and they say, oh, you're doing great, now let's see how we can expand upon that?
Great question. Well, I think one of the first things we had to do was have a very open and frank set of discussions with our internal constituents, our Board of Trustees, the leadership of the institution, faculty and staff on this campus as well. And so one of the very first meetings I held with our university in 2009, August 2009, I took the opportunity to, having spent several months evaluating enrollment, degree productivity, looking at benchmarks for A&T, and then comparing that data to other comparable universities in the UNC system and comparable universities around the nation as a whole, seeing where there were opportunities before I ever set foot on the campus, and then decided in a risky way to say to our university in my very, very first public meeting with the campus to share that data and to accentuate, if you will, areas where there were gaps in our performance against those of comparable universities in the state and around the nation as a whole. And what I mean by comparable universities is universities that are similar in mission, and our mission is a land-grant institution, and similar in Carnegie class, doctoral research universities. And then what I mean by gaps, let's say enrollment trends. Our enrollment was going down And those universities that were comparable in mission and Carnegie class in the UNC system, their enrollments were trending positive. And student success, retention, graduation rates, I was at one place, theirs were competitively higher. And the other part of the conversation was the fact that those very same universities that were comparable in Carnegie class and similar in mission, that is big STEM and similar doctoral programs and the like, quite honestly, they were becoming browner. East Carolina University, UNC Charlotte, and UNC Greensboro, those were the comparable universities, Carnegie class, for example. And they were increasingly becoming browner. And I took similar universities outside of the state and showed similar gaps in our performance and those universities' performance. And so, and I said to our university, as a faculty, in my mind, these gaps suggest opportunities for our university. The challenge for us is assess whether we really want to compete with these universities and close these gaps. And so I asked the faculty that fundamental question, do we want to compete? And I remember the response was somewhat of a quiet, mousy response. Yeah, we want to compete. And so I said, well, that's the weakest response I think I would possibly ever expect to get starting my tenure as chancellor here. And so then someone else responded, hell yeah, we want to compete.
I was going to say, I was surprised nobody yelled out Aggie pride. That's a stunner to me.
But that's a critically important perspective, because the next few slides, after there was a commitment to compete, suggested big things we were going to have to do. Plan differently, invest more wisely, perform at a higher level, act differently as a university. And that meant lots of change in our university. And so now, none of us knew what all that meant at the time. It was just an open-ended conversation. And so we began our journey on that day, moving forward, beginning to define what it meant to compete. Improving customer service, raising academic standards, improving faculty productivity, enhancing our academic facilities, investing in technology. And so we framed those key things out initially before we ever developed any kind of a strategic plan, and began to spend money on the things that were wisest. We took money from things that were less important and began to start targeting our resources against those things that mattered most, to begin to position our university to start competing. And so that process, those investments, the decisions we began to make have been consistent with investments we've continued to make, decisions we've continued to make year over year about our university. And so we now are beginning to realize the benefits of those tough decisions that we made years ago.
One of the things that helps A&T stand out a lot is that it doesn't appear that there's been a siloed approach in that way. A lot of HBCUs that have tremendous programs of strength, that's what you know them for. I graduated from Morgan. We're known for engineering. Not known for journalists, but we're known for engineering. But A&T has become known for diverse strength in liberal arts, in engineering, in agriculture, in education. So was that planning phase to say, hey, look, here are some growth metrics for each of you, each of these schools, each of these departments? Or was it, here's a university-wide charge, go out and scale this to what you do?
That's a great question. I tell you, you're asking a very good question. And I'll say to you that when you think about the land-grant mission, we had to really define what being a land-grant institution meant. And being a land-grant institution means that all academic programs contribute to the realization and delivery of our land-grant mission. The liberal arts, engineering, business, agriculture, education, health sciences, all of these academic programs help us contribute to being a successful land-grant institution, quite honestly. And so with that in mind, we then backed away and looked at the degree programs on that campus and the colleges that were delivering. And I used the analogy, as you know, I'm an engineer, and so we started looking at in the context of an automotive engine, if you are firing on three of an 8-cylinder engine with three of your colleges doing well and the others aren't,
that ain't good enough.
Your engine's gonna spit and sputter and et cetera. And we were doing that as a university. We were spitting and sputtering. Mm-hmm. We were doing some things well, but in the grand scheme of things, most things we were not doing well. And one of the reasons that was true is because we had not made strategic investments across all of our academic programs in a consistent way. We'd not set clear expectations and outcomes for all of our colleges to perform at a certain level, quite honestly. And we had not made many changes in our academic programs and our college framework for 50 years or so relative to the academic units, schools, colleges, et cetera. We had added some new degree programs here and there, but nothing in a wholesale way. And so we made a very, very tough decision. It was one of the most strategic decisions we made an investment in, and that is an academic restructuring. We decided to take all of our academic programs before we ever started making new programs and investing in new faculty. We took all of our academic yield programs, took all the degree programs, put them in a big bucket, and then we started pulling them out one by one and putting them in new colleges. Mm-hmm. Engineering programs tend to only align with other engineering programs, but programs out of our College of Arts and Sciences, which is a large college,
right.
We took lots of those programs and broke them up and took the liberal arts degree programs, or those aligned with liberal arts, and we put them in a new College of Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences and created a new college for those programs. We created a new college called Health Sciences, and we took nursing and other programs out of arts and sciences and created a new College of Health Sciences with psychology and kinesiology and social work and sociology and nursing, and created a new college there. And then we took all of the science programs out of our College of Arts and Sciences and combined those with a school of technology that we had and created a new College of Science and Technology. We hired new deans for almost all of those colleges. And we began to add new faculty resources to those new colleges in areas where we knew there were new degree program opportunities for enrollment growth that had grown up over the last decade or two that we did not offer on our campus. Mm-hmm. And we began to frame out those new degree programs, and we now offer many of those degree programs today on our campus. Degree programs that students have an interest in today. Degree programs that were offered at UNC Greensboro, they were offered at UNC Charlotte, they were offered at East Carolina, and other universities that were comparable to ours, but we weren't offering those programs. That gave a bigger interest to our university of African American students who were going to these PWIs in record numbers. Now those students showed interest in our university. Now they were beginning to come to our university in record numbers. So we had to make some tough decisions. Now you can imagine this made a number of our faculty very nervous. What's going to happen to me? What college am I going to be housed in? What if I don't fit anywhere, if you will? And so we have to be open and honest and candid about the process. Everybody's going to be impacted in a similar way. And we were very open and clear and transparent about the process. Amazingly, our faculty supported this process in very significant ways because they knew while it may have some potential negative consequences for them at the moment, in the long term, it was going to benefit them and others on our campus, and it was certainly going to benefit our university in the long term. So that restructuring, Jared, was a major, tough set of tough decisions for our university that's deriving substantial benefits to our institution today.
You talked about the land grant mission, and that is the one from both federal and other respects, corporate partnerships, for example, one of the strongest veins of how HBCUs run, at least as a sector, the 19 land grant historically black institutions. That has also come with some measure of controversy because states that have an obligation to match that federal funding to HBCUs have not done so. A&T has been recently in the headlines for one of those discussions among the state legislators. Of the 2 schools in Carolina to receive land grant funding, there's a disparity between you guys and North Carolina State. What are the conversations like with you and your governmental relations folks, your alumni, with the lawmakers to say, hey, look, A&T we're not slacking here. We're tremendous. What is not to give away any secrets or inside baseball, but how do you make that case to the lawmakers to say, hey, look, not only do the right thing, but do the thing that's going to help you create jobs for black farmers, do the thing that's going to help you increase your tax base? What is that case made?
Well, one of the things we felt was critically important for us to do is enhance our university's strengths in areas where we knew we had strengths and competitiveness, enhance our university's performance in areas that make sense to our legislators. Enrollment growth, student success, job placement of our graduates, increase in research, economic impact in our region, and et cetera. Mm-hmm. So we were being smart about making our strategic investments in our institution, enhancing our competitiveness and successes. And then as we began to see the successes of our university and the clarity that our university was competing with those institutions in the state that they always valued and funded more competitively, began to realize these guys are real. These guys are very serious, and we began able to make the case to demonstrate it, that our university was performing at a level consistent with those of our peers in the UNC system, making significant contributions, recruiting top students, graduating top students, increasing research, increasing innovation, and deriving more substantial economic impact of our university in the region and the state as a whole. We packaged all of that in a very, very competitive way. Talking points, presentations, hosting breakfast meetings with our legislative delegates, going to Raleigh on a regular basis and sharing materials on our university, leaving behind talking points, meeting with the leadership of the legislature, meeting with the governor, for example. And in each and every one of those scenarios, not only were we educating people about who we are and the competitiveness of our institution, the impact of our institution, we also were very strategic about the resources we needed to continue to be competitive with those comparable universities in the UNC system, and pointing out areas where there was a discrepancy or an inequity in funding. Mm-hmm. And those legislators got the message. And as a consequence, we've begun to see increasing levels of funding, both to elevate our university as a doctoral research university in the UNC system. If you look at the current budget that's now under, unfortunately, it's in debate now with the legislature and the governor, right. It has in it about $10 million of operating dollars, funds to fund graduate education and research on our campus, funds to support new faculty positions on our campus and technology on our campus, but also in that budget is funding to bring to a minimal level the required federal mandate of a dollar-for-dollar match of state funds for dollar match for the federal funds we receive
from the
as part of our ag extension and ag research for our university. Mm-hmm. Those items are currently in this year's budget. Several years ago, we also received funding support for a new engineering building that's now under construction, 130,000 square foot new structure that's coming out of the ground at this moment. So our legislature and our governor now recognize that we are a critical asset to this state and certainly the region where we're located as a university. Now, one of the things you also have to realize as well is that if you look globally at where trends are occurring and where industries are flourishing, in almost every aspect of our lives, technology is becoming a most critical component. Entertainment, food production and food safety, transportation systems, communication systems, for example, education, for example, in every aspect, health, every aspect of our lives, technology is a key piece. Being that we are one of the 3 to 4 universities with the largest STEM production in our state, and in particular, we are the largest producer of minority STEM graduates of not only universities in our state, but universities in the nation. Mm-hmm. We are a critical asset to every global company in North Carolina that makes a part of its human resource needs recruiting and retaining top technical talent, a diverse technical talent. And that's very true also of those industries we're trying to recruit to North Carolina. Every one of them places as a critical part of their decision making to move to a location that they must have access to a strong technical diverse workforce. We are critical to our state and in many ways our nation meeting those growing demands. So we are a critical asset. So we have positioned ourselves, Jared, to be a major asset to our state, to our region, to the nation as a whole. And as a consequence, legislators understand that. Departments of Commerce understand that. And so investments are being made to ensure that we are continuing to prosper, we're continuing to grow, and benefit from the investments that the state needs to make in our university to continue to be a shining example of what excellence looks like. And so we're very excited about where we are in that conversation.
You riled some folks up at the recent meeting with faculty, the back to school kickoff, where you talked about you had a similar conversation to what you had 9 years ago. What does it look like if we're doing better? Now it's a conversation of what does it look like if we're the best? Is that a similar, I guess, acclimation process to get people used to, hey, we're going to be a school that may have soon 20,000 students. We're going to be a school that is hand in hand with Greensboro as a campus, a city, a college city. Is that an easy sell to make, or do you find that there's some reticence among some of your stakeholders?
It is a very easy sell to make today. I would say the predominance of our stakeholders are very proud of our success today. They understand that we are not forsaking our HBCU history and traditions. They recognize that today. They recognize that we can both be an HBCU and be excellent at the same time. They recognize that today. Obviously, you have to help bring people along so that they recognize what you're trying to accomplish as well as the university. And so we've had lots of stakeholders who are integral part of our discussions on a regular basis. But you also have to keep moving the ball. You can't, if we decided to start resting on our laurels, would be one of the worst things we could possibly do. There are enormous opportunities ahead of us, as I shared with our faculty and staff last week. Some of our best work, in my mind, now is out in front of us. It's ahead of us. Mm-hmm. And we've got to continue to position to enhance the excellence of our academic programs even more, broaden the degree program offerings we provide to this community and this region and the state. We've got to continue to increase our research. We've got to continue to think beyond where we are today. And so I ask really tough questions about how good do we really want to be. Mm-hmm. And so instead of asking the question about competing 10 years ago, as I did, I asked a question this time about how transformative do we want to be?
Right.
How much do we want to be a part of helping to change the economic posture of Greensboro and Guilford County? And in particular, how much do we want to be a part of helping to create wealth in East Greensboro, where our university is located? This is the area of Greensboro that's the predominance of minority families live and grow and raise their families, quite honestly, raise their children, quite honestly. And we are an integral part of what we call East Greensboro, and we have to continue to be a part of the leading conversations about how do we ensure that we are helping to attract startup companies and new companies move into North Carolina and to this part of the state to set up their shops, their manufacturing facilities, their headquarters in East Greensboro, and bring in retail and jobs and opportunities to this community. And so we've been very vocal in this space. We've been very clear about this in conversations. We've met very extensively with city leadership, the manager, city manager, the mayor of the city council, our city council delegates who represented our area of the community, for example. And I assure you that today, this group of individuals are all aligned on in an agreement that we have to do business differently here in Greensboro. We must develop strategies so that everyone benefits, all areas of our community benefit from economic growth and prosperity, quite honestly. And we've got to continue to drive those discussions. And that's what land-grant institutions do.
And then the final question for you, and again, we appreciate your time. You've always been regarded sector-wide as one of the really quiet gentlemen of the HBCU president and chancellor hierarchy. You're not riled up in meetings when you go out of town. Everybody looks at you kind of like one of the deans of our leaders. But in recent years, you've become very much more active on social media, and telling jokes on Twitter and catching guys on campus who don't have on an A&T shirt but got on a Duke shirt or something like that. Sure. Was that a process of not becoming more comfortable as a leader, but becoming more comfortable with that being a role of a college president? And it kind of signals to me that you got a lot of years ahead of you. Like you really just hitting your stride, and you're going to do this for a while. Is that true?
That's the plan. And just as I look at our university and areas of opportunity for growth and opportunities for continued success, I also look at my leadership style and areas for me to personally grow and where I can make a bigger difference by changing the way I do some things, quite honestly. And I was not very active in social media at all, and decided that this would be a great space for me to be able to communicate more effectively with a larger group of our constituents and others in our community and around the nation about the great things we're trying to do here. And so I had to grow into this space, grow more comfortable using social media. I think social media can be a pitfall if you're not careful with how it gets managed.
Yes, sir.
And so I've always tried to use it in a very effective, positive, healthy way, and I try to be a good example of that to our students as a whole as well, quite frankly, because I certainly want to make sure that as an example to them that we are helping prepare them to be successful leaders in their professions as entrepreneurs or accountants or engineers or health care providers or whatever they may be when they leave this institution. We also want them to be very successful at what they do. We also want them to be effective in reaching back into their communities where they grew up and where they're living to bring forward others to be successful as well. And so helping to use the tools we have at our disposal to be more impactful and more effective in creating success. And I also believe very firmly, as I say to our campus constituents on a regular basis, there are several things I try to phrase on a regular basis. One, we're trying to be excellent at everything we do. Excellence is not cheap, so we have to continue to raise money and invest wisely on our campus, quite honestly, and that if we're going to be amongst the largest institutions in America where African American students attend college, then what is going to be our impact? Are we graduating more graduates in areas of greatest need to our nation? Mm-hmm. If we're not impacting, and being the largest doesn't mean anything substantive, quite honestly. And so I'm very much interested in outcomes and impact more than I am being the largest HBCU in America, quite honestly. And so we talk often about what difference are we making as a university in our communities, in our region, in the state, and the nation as a whole. And so those drive us in very significant ways. And one of the great fortunes for me here is that we have an incredible board of trustees to work with that's very businesslike in helping us frame strategy for the future. And we have an exceptional leadership team here that works very, very well together. very collaborative and engaging, but we have a great faculty and staff that's now buying into a great and positive future for our university, which I'm excited about. And in athletics as well. I've always believed that athletics plays a very big part in your university and its image and reputation. I've observed how other large universities use the success of athletics to excite alums and fans and friends of the university. And as a result, those fans and friends write checks and bigger checks, quite honestly. And I've always been a firm believer that students go to college and want to go to college where they're winners. It's most often universities who win national championships see an uptick in applications for admissions, and they see uptick in private fundraising. Well, and we certainly have seen that as evidenced here at A&T.
And what kind of pressure does that yield? Because I think with the success that you guys have had, not just even in football, which is the most notable thing or the most noticeable thing, but men's and women's basketball, bowling. I mean, there's a number of things that you guys have won championships in. Track and field, obviously. I mean, all across the board. But does that create a new kind of pressure from alumni to say, all right, we're running all over the MEAC. It's time to think somewhere else. And that's one delegation. And then you have others who say, no. We love being in the MEAC. We love running the MEAC. I mean, how do you kind of balance with success in sports also comes the spiciness from alumni. So how do you navigate that space?
That's a great question as well. And quite honestly, we want to have those kinds of debate. We routinely go through, with the UNC system, a redefining of a university's peers. Every university does in the UNC system. And as you grow and prosper, you have to continually reassess how you benchmark yourself or compare yourself to other organizations. The private sector does it. Other nonprofits do it. Institutions of higher education are beginning to do so in a much more substantial way. I observed that through my role in the central office, where our PWIs, especially the more successful of our PWIs, were regularly and routinely identifying their peers and benchmarking themselves against their peers and continually evaluating themselves against national rankings and the like. We have to compete in this same space, quite honestly. And so in athletics, in this instance, obviously the more we continue to be successful at recruiting successful student athletes and competing successfully in sports, more fans of our university ask the question, are we thinking about doing other things? Are we going to remain in the MEAC? Are we going to join some other FCS conference similar to what Hampton did a year ago, for example? Mm-hmm. Are we thinking about moving to FBS in football? All of those are relevant questions. And so we, without exception, in conversations with our board of trustees, have to always continually be asking ourselves, what's next for our institution? How do we remain competitive? How do we ensure that we're remaining in the mix of institutions that are attractive to students in the future? Our ability to continue to recruit and retain top faculty and staff on our campus, our ability to continue to raise money. And so all of those discussions for us are very real and very relevant discussions that we have and will continue to have. And out of those will come decisions either to do something different or remain where we are, or not seek to move from our R2 research university to an R1 research. You have to look at where your resources are going to come from. Can you afford to do these things? And if you elect to do these things, would you be able to maintain a high level of competitiveness as well? And so we want to continue to be smart about what we're doing here. And so we don't shy away from the conversations. There are very passionate Aggies who love being where we are, love the MEAC, and don't want to do anything differently. Mm-hmm. There's a growing population who are very competitive in their workplace. They're doing exceedingly well in their professions, and they know what competition looks like, and know what market share looks like, and they want to make sure that their alma mater continues to think this same way in a business-like way as well. And so